Hello everyone, Pulse here for another episode of Forging Fantasy, EverQuest Next. Now in today's episode we get right back into the discussion of EverQuest Next Landmark and the fact that it will have combat and combat elements. Now you may be saying at this point, well Pulse, didn't you already do an episode on all this? And to you insightful viewers, I would say yes. Yes I have. But in a recent interview between SOE's Georgeson and Forbes, there has been some revealings about what the plans are for Landmark, and by the end of it, I was super excited. So before I pick apart the article and get into the juicy details of it all, I would suggest watching the first Landmark Has Combat video because there's a ton of theorizing that I did in that, which I'll be referencing when I talk about the new information provided in the article. Now there should be an annotation in the corner, should be the left side there for you, so just go ahead and click on that guide to check out that episode, so when you come back to this, we'll all be on the same page. So let's get right into the good stuff, shall we? Let's dive right in. So, I'm not going to beat around the bush on this, but SOE has confirmed in this interview that Landmark is much more than we originally believed when it was first revealed, mainly as a building tool and a precursor to EverQuest Next the MMO. Instead, Landmark is going to be a fully fledged MMO with numerous mechanics common in MMOs present in Landmark either at launch or planned to be implemented very shortly after. So we can now expect things like hostile NPCs and monsters, loot drops, weapons, character customization and growth through armor and weaponry. There's tons of other stuff that could come along with that. On top of this though, it was also revealed that the AI system that's going into EverQuest Next will actually be implemented in the same way through the emergent AI system in EverQuest Next Landmark, which is really meant to make the creatures and NPCs in the world react in a much more believable and immersive way. That's really cool news. Now then we get into some nice discussion about combat and its intricacies with a nice reveal that we can also expect group content, which is obviously meant for more than one person to be involved in, which suggests to me that Landmark may actually contain dungeons and or large-scale dynamic events or similar kind of content. Now he continues the interview with this nice little 10-bit, I believe is new information. The quote goes as this: "As far as you can actually play in the game in combat, we want to embrace a bunch of different gameplay styles. If you want to be able to be ranged, you'll be able to. Spells and melee, you'll be able to do that too. The same mechanisms that will be found in EverQuest Next, well, you'll be able to swap out tools and weapons to mix and match character abilities." Now there was a little pause there in the middle, so I'm not sure if something got cut out of the interview or whatnot, but that last line in particular is what's intriguing to me, because I'm fairly sure, as I said, that this is newly confirmed information, mainly that there's a weapon swapping system somewhere in EverQuest Next and in turn Landmark. This has become a fairly popular design choice for MMOs, where you have either the combat-oriented swapping system, kind of like Guild Wars 2 and the upcoming Elder Scrolls Online, or you could have something similar to maybe Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, where a weapon swap is more akin to like a full class swap of sorts, and it just changes the way that you play entirely, and it just really resets the whole way you play your character. I'm not really surprised that SOE was looking at a weapon swap system in either of those versions, or maybe the combination of both. I am surprised, however, that they've opted to provide this complex combat like this in Landmark, when all this time we've been led to believe that Landmark was all about the creativity and the world building and all that stuff. Now we get to what I think is probably the most asked question at this point since the reveal of the combat elements in Landmark about a week ago, and that's how will people be able to build their content and their whatever they can think of, really. How will they be able to build these things they see in their mind when monsters and combat and all of these other MMO mechanics are getting in their way? And Georgeson replied with an answer like this: "We're still debating exactly how we want to implement this, but one theory is that we'll have some continents that are non-combat oriented and some that are risk oriented, or perhaps the rule that monsters won't wander into people's claims. People that want to be able to build without monsters will be able to do that, and people that want risk will be able to play with that risk and get greater associated rewards. Now that is just awesome to hear. That is absolutely fantastic. As I said back a few days ago in the original look at the combat kind of tidbit that it would be in Landmark, I said that I wouldn't be surprised to see separate continents or maybe even separate servers used specifically for Landmark's architects and creators so that they could do exactly what they want to do and they can go build what they want. And that's exactly what they said they're going to do here. This is one of the options they've considered already, and it's probably the one they're going to do. It just seems like the most logical at this point, unless something like completely off the table that we don't know about comes into play. From here though, the interview moves towards a conversation about what the difference between Landmark and EverQuest Next actually is, and this is what Georgeson had to say on that matter. EverQuest Next is more of a focused narrative with story arcs and rallying cries, emergent AI pushing things around. Landmark is very much an exploration and creativity and making things that are cool to show off to other players, but a lot of systems developed in EverQuest Next will be put in Landmark. So there you have it. EverQuest Next is going full on with the fantasy style story with quests that engage the player and enemies that make the world feel real within its narrative. Landmark, on the other hand, is all about the mechanics of an MMO, but plopped into a much less focused path meant for players to create the content and experience the world itself in a much more kind of sandboxy manner. Now, one other thing that should be mentioned is that rallying calls seem to only be something implemented in EverQuest Next, the MMO, and not in Landmark, and I think I can with confidence say why. With Landmark, you have the creativity of the community to provide ongoing content, and that alone is enough to keep a game alive. Just look at games like Minecraft. Through the modding community and the creativity of its player base, it is still one of the most popular games today despite being out for a number of years now. Now, this same principle is being applied to Landmark. EverQuest Next, on the other hand, is being handled much more like a traditional MMO, with the rallying calls being SOE's sort of system and way to provide the excitement, the challenge, and the intrigue to keep players engaged after they've maxed out their characters or finished all the content or run through the main story. Rallying cries is, from what they've said, more akin to what they would do with like very quick patches or dynamic events. This way they can provide kind of sporadic content to the players. Now finally, at the end of the interview, we get a couple more nice tidbits of information. The information comes that we can take the templates from our creations that are built in Landmark and then take those into EverQuest Next as long as they meet certain aesthetic requirements. Now, this is pretty cool because unlike my prediction that EverQuest Next, the MMO version, would have a dumbed down set of tools for the creation in the MMO version, we instead are given the liberty to put some of our creations from Landmark into the MMO straight away, again as long as they meet some of the aesthetic requirements of EverQuest Next. We don't really know what these rules are going to be, but it's pretty safe to assume that we won't be able to sort of import the templates for stuff that's overbearingly large. We can't put in things that are going to be destructive in a way that makes the world look awkward. Like you can't take out a whole mountainside or a huge hill and have like a house sticking out of it in a very awkward way. And of course, the easiest one to suspect is rule number one when it comes to character or player created content. You can't have it look like a penis. That's going to be rule number one, and I know that's going to be, dare I say, hard for a lot of you to deal with, but I think you'll get over it because this is an awesome set of information. Now, you'd think we're at the end of it, right? But then, right at the damn end of this interview, Georgeson says the most amazing thing. He says, "This is just the beginning. Imagine what will happen when we add PvP to EverQuest Next Landmark." And from that moment, the angels sang, a bird perched upon my shoulder to talk to me in the voice from that guy in the Dos Equis commercials, and it said, "Pulse, you amazing bastard, you called it. You called it all." And it feels pretty fucking great. I knew it in my gut that since SOE was just going completely bonkers with the MMO formula, that they'd have to be stupid to neglect the very idea of Landmark PvP, and thank goodness they didn't disappoint. Now, I've already gone over more than enough times how awesome Landmark and its tools could be in a PvP scenario, but the fact is that they're going to have separate continents for those who want to build their stuff. They're going to have the mobs and the environment and all the resource gathering from those who kind of want to play the PvE game that's similar to like survival mode in like Minecraft, where you can make your claim and build your stuff, and you have to fend off from the monsters, and you become part of the environment. And then you have the PvP and Landmark thing that they just mentioned here, and all in all, I think I deserve a medal or something. I mean, the only thing that I kind of mentioned in my previous episode talking about combat and Landmark was that there was the dungeon making and the ability to place NPCs and monsters in a dungeon that you could make. That's the only thing that wasn't confirmed pretty much in this interview. But the possibility for this is even closer than ever, since they did confirm monsters in Landmark are going to be much more than sort of just annoyances, I want to say, rather than legit adversaries. They're going to be tough monsters. They're not going to be something typical to Minecraft where they just come in and you just hack away and it's very boring. They're nothing more than an annoying part of the game. It's all awesome, just straight up all awesome. Now, I've come down from my high a little bit. I'm gonna calm it down, sort of. But in closing, guys, what do we have here with Landmark? Well, Landmark is going to do nearly everything I personally said it should do. That way they can have all of the stuff for all the different kinds of players, and it's super exciting for Landmark and EverQuest Next. I'm super stoked for all of this stuff that's coming about Landmark and EverQuest Next. Now, we won't be getting all of the combat and all of these features, and we won't be getting the PvP straight away, mind you, but the fact remains that SOE has obviously taken large leaps towards these ideas and taking them into account, and they're well on their way to implementing them, and that's pretty amazing. I mean, this is just honestly an amazing set of information that absolutely shakes up what Landmark is going to be, especially because we only thought it was going to be the creative map or plain area where we can just create stuff, and that on its own was cool, but there's so much more. And I mean, it just sounds awesome. The only concern, and I do mean only concern, could possibly be that Landmark and EverQuest Next are still going to be too similar to one another, and I suppose until we know more information on what makes them different, that's a fair and valid concern. I, however, believe that EverQuest Next will simply appeal to a different audience. It will appeal more to the typical fantasy MMO player that is looking forward to something new but still relatable. There are plenty of people out there who are tired of typical MMO gameplay tropes and archetypes and styles and all of the stuff that's become very bland over the years in MMO gameplay, and they want some innovation, but they simply don't care for the games like Minecraft or Terraria, which is what Landmark is more akin to. They just don't want that. They want a nice MMO, and they're tired of the old stuff, but maybe Landmark doesn't appeal to them. There's definitely a crowd for that. And in the end, I simply think there's going to be kind of three camps going into Landmark and EverQuest Next. You're going to have the people who love the creativity and they love the interaction with the other player-created content that are only going to stick to Landmark. Then you have the opposite side of the spectrum with the people that I just mentioned who simply want a new MMO, and they like the EverQuest lore, and they like the destructibility and the ability for player-created content from Landmark to be put in, but they maybe don't like the actual building aspects of Landmark and the interactivity between themselves and the world. They want more of a typical MMO fantasy experience. Those people will stick to only EverQuest Next. And then what I think is going to happen, you're going to have like the middle group, which is going to be the majority, or at least half. It'll equal the other two combined, which are going to be the people who go between both games on a semi-regular basis to experience the full EverQuest Next sort of feeling. They want to be immersed completely in the EverQuest Next experience. I think that's where the majority of people are going to fall. I definitely see myself doing that, because even right now, when we don't know very much, they sound different enough to appeal to two very different audiences, but they're two different gameplay styles that I enjoy. So why wouldn't I go between them? There's no reason to discriminate between them, that is for sure. So guys and gals, that's going to do it for me on this episode of Forging Fantasy EverQuest Next. Let me know what you guys think of all this awesome stuff that's come out, and what are you most excited about when it comes to EverQuest Next Landmark? Are you still all about the building aspects? Are you looking forward to the sandbox style adventure with friends in the open world of Landmark? Or perhaps you're really into having that adrenaline pumping and that feeling of that rush that comes when you're doing the PvP stuff, especially when the idea is you could be sieging an enemy alliance's self-made keep, something they worked hard on. The adrenaline that comes with the gain and loss of something that you made is just through the roof, but I've talked about that enough. Now, personally, I'm excited for all aspects of the game, to be honest. It just, every variant of this is really appealing to me, and I can't wait to get my grubby little hands on it. I really cannot wait. I am super pumped for EverQuest Next Landmark at this point, and I can't wait to see what happens between Landmark and EverQuest Next, the MMO version. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you found this entertaining or informative in the slightest, I would very much appreciate a like, a subscribe, a comment down below on anything EverQuest Next, MMO, or gaming related in general. Thanks again for watching. This has been Pulse, bringing you more awesome EverQuest Next content, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.